Welcome to Feminine Power Time. Turn off the chatter and tune in to what matters. This is the place where wisdom, well-being, and personal leadership meet so that each of us can be part of reimagining the way we in this world work. We like to say moving from the banana world into a more beautiful world. So I am your host, Christina Arylo, and if you are new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you've been around for a while, welcome back. We are just completing our ninth birthday last week. We just had our ninth birthday last week, and we are just right in between the place where we're going to start season 8.5. We like to do things let's do things differently around here. And season 8.5, as we talked about last week, was really about a spacer for us to really, for this next season, and whether that season is this summer or the season is the winter where you're at, or it's whenever season you're listening to this, it's a season of 3 months to really give ourselves, to really tune into the clarity and the centeredness and the calmness and the deeper wisdom that's here for us at this time on the planet. It's one of the things we all have in common, no matter where you are at. We are all walking on this planet together at this time. And I believe we all dropped in whenever we dropped in, at the time we dropped in, and the bodies we dropped in, and the family systems we dropped in, and the careers that we dropped in. Because that was part of our mission. If we were in Star Wars, we would all be part of the team of we would all be Jedis, and we would be each doing our parts. We don't all have to do all of them. And one of the reasons we've kept Feminine Power Time going for now 8 years, plus it'll moving into this next cycle, is that we are here to really be a place for those who are in the world, elevating it, showing different ways, creating different ways, not through having to rage against the machine, but by our power of our voices, our choices, our presence, and how we live. And so today, what we're going to do is we're just going to take a little pause here and kind of like look at the name of this podcast, Feminine Power Time. And people have often said to me, you should change the name, Christine. If you just got rid of the word feminine, then more people would listen. It would be more acceptable in the business world. It would be more acceptable in the entrepreneur world. It would just be more acceptable, and people would be less woo-wooed out by it. And again, I have refused, but I've listened to that. I've actually, even last year, before we started season 8, I had a deep conversation with the universe about it. And again, it came back, nope, keep the name feminine, because it's part of what we don't understand as a culture. It's part of what actually has been dismissed, non-valued, made weird, made evil. Sometimes when I go out and to talk about it, the first response for people is, you mean like feminine hygiene products? I'm like, oh my God, like that is not the feminine, right? So this has been my work in the world for whatever reason. First, I had to, recontextualize and define self-love. And now it is partly it's been about the feminine and recontextualizing it. So I think it's good for us every once in a while to pause and explore. And today's topic and today's title is that we're circling around is, what is the feminine? What is the feminine, and how can it help us at this time? So just kind of think about that. You might even write it down. What is the feminine, and how can it help us, and how can it help you? So each of us individually and also collectively. The common wisdom teaching is this is the time for the feminine to lead and the masculine to support. And one of the things we continue to explore here is the dance of the feminine and the masculine. You can call it the yin and the yang, the anima and the animus, water and fire. And there's so many different names for it, but it is within each one of us. And the goal is not to get rid of the masculine and boot it out. Again, this is not about men and about women. The goal is to bring the two into harmony. But because we've been living in a culture that is so over in the masculine in many distorted ways, and then the feminine has become distorted as well, what happens is we could focus on the feminine and really root into it and resonate with it and understand its power within us. it actually pulls the distortions over. And it then creates wholeness within ourselves. And then from that wholeness, whether it's a choice you make in a relationship or and how you raise your children or how you run your team or the changes you make as a leader within a company or just how you choose to live, then what you create by its nature will create more wholeness. Sounds esoteric, but very practical. And that's what we're here to do today, actually bring this into the practical. So we're going to explore three different ways what the feminine is, what that looks like in our lives, and how you can use it to support you and how we can use it to support us. And we have a guest today. So I'm really excited to introduce you to a person who's very dear to my heart, who I have has been in my life. Gosh, 2012, I think, is when we met. Another transformational time in cyclical living, and she's going to be the host and the kind of tender to season 8.5, the season of light. And her name is Jennifer Alexander, and I'm going to bring her on in just a minute. But before I do, let me tell you why I've brought her on and why she is going to be the host of this season. Jennifer and I originally worked together when I was doing a spiritual transformation program called Phoenix Rising. And that now looks like the work I do one-on-one with people personally called Align to Your Design. It's all about elevating and elevating into our greatest next evolution of ourselves. And when Jennifer and I completed that transformational experience together, there were a couple things that were true. She still maintained her identity and her wisdom and knowledge from being an MBA. She went to MBA school just down the road from me. She went to University of Chicago while I went to Kellogg, worked in consulting just like I did, but is deeply studied in yoga and the yoga philosophy. And one of the things that I think she'll have to let us know was pretty like kind of undercover before the Phoenix Rising, was the beauty of her voice, at least in a public. And I didn't know anything about it. And one of Jennifer's pieces of her work in the world is to be the voice of the divine. And she has a beautiful voice, both in a beautiful presence. I really feel like Jennifer embodies grace naturally, as I embody fierceness naturally. And the two of us together pull each other over to the other part even more. So when I'm with Jennifer, I more naturally can be in my grace, in that feminine energy. And I think when Jennifer's with me, she can more naturally access the fierceness. And that's we both have those within us. But there's a way when you are in a relationship with somebody who just kind of naturally embodies more of the feminine or more of the masculine, which is really natural. Is if you were to look at the 30 or so power spectrums that I've developed that give language to this, what you would see is that, yeah, there's just a natural place that I'm more comfortable in. So it's in our relationships when they're healthy that allows us to stretch into that other polarity, to that other side that allows us to access our full self. So what I'm hoping that Jennifer will do for you and for all of us is that her capacity to be this voice of grace, this presence of grace, and her fierce stand for the feminine. She's also a mother of two beautiful little girls, and all of the feminine wisdom. Jennifer, after we finished that mentorship, has been studying the feminine for, I guess it would be now more than 11 years. And not just has been studying it, but has been living it and been applying it to mothering, to her business. She runs a beautiful coffee business with her partner for the last decade and many other things. So she brings a lot of practicality as well as a lot of grace. So I'm going to bring her in, and then we'll together, all three of us here, plus everyone who's tuning in, kind of touch on these three places today. And as we go into this, before I bring Jennifer on, just take a moment with yourself and let's all just take a breath together and just land here in this place and space right now. And imagine us right now casting a rainbow, or what I like to call a healthy time span between now and the next 3 months, because that is the cycle. The, season of light will be 9 episodes. Of course, you could listen to them, in different time period. I guess you could binge listen to them after they're recorded, but we recommend listening to them in order. And there will also be a solstice in there as well. But just imagine 3 months from now, this season, and that might be summer or winter if you're here with us in time. Just see yourself 3 months from now and allow yourself to just feel held and accompanied as you go through these next 3 months, presencing whatever might be changing for you. Presencing right now whatever might be calling you forward, might be calling you for something different. Something that's calling you because it's time to evolve. Your next evolution is coming through you, whether you like it or not, or even if you love it, might scare you, make your toes tingle. And I, as my friend Shiloh's mother always said, if you're not shaking a little bit in your boots, then you're not you're not really doing nothing. So it's okay. But just really feel that and know that Jennifer and I will be here for you in this season of light. And the invitation is to feel accompanied, that you're not alone in this stretch, that we're all stretching. I'm evolving, I'm elevating, I'm loving it. And it always also is, stretching me in places that can be a lot. So a lot of breathing going to go on here. So just presence that for yourself so you can get your own coordinates. I'm just asking you, as you go through these next 3 months, what is one thing you know that you would really love to feel as you walk through this season? What is one thing you know that you would really love to feel? And bring that in along with light, because that is our center point as we dive into what is the feminine and how can it help. So Jennifer, dear one, I'm curious, first of all, welcome, 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 welcome.
Thank you. It's just an undescribable pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me. And thank you for that incredibly beautiful recap of the last 12 years.
Mm. I'm curious if you would just share a little bit about where you are in location, because I think that is very cool, just so everyone can kind of get a beat on where you are. And also to Jennifer's not new to Feminine Power Time. She's been with us for many, many years, and maybe share a little bit about your relationship to Feminine Power Time and why you said yes to being co-creation here with us for these next three months or so, and then we'll dive into the next part.
Okay. So, first of all, I am living currently in Central America in a beautiful town called Antigua, which is the former capital of Guatemala. This is a land that's very special to me and my family. My partner's family is all from here. And I actually visited this country before I even met my partner and had an experience. I was leading a group of students from my graduate school, from the MBA program, on a trip around the country before it was the students coming in to start, and I was an older student. And I had an experience one night when we were in the middle of the jungle where I looked up and there was a hole in the thatched roof of our eco lodge, and I saw the moon in the sky. And I just got this message that this place was going to be very important to me. And that was in 2007, and it made no sense whatsoever within the context of my current life then, but it obviously makes sense now. Um, so this place is very, very dear and very important to me. And so that's where I am. And in terms of my history with Feminine Power Time, I am, for those who know me, I'm sort of I call myself the last adopter of technology. So I was a latecomer to podcasts, discovering them in the midst of the pandemic. So I don't know, probably sometime in 2020. And I was still a fairly new mother. I had a newly 3-year-old and newly 1-year-old. And the way that my family handled the pandemic was really in isolation for about a year and a half. So podcasts were my lifeline. And I listened to two. There was one about parenting, and then there was feminine power time. And, I had known Christine and worked with her for, I don't know what that would have been, 8-ish years at that point, and had, followed along for the last several years before that. But it really felt like this very powerful reconnection, not just to Christine, not just to the feminine, but to myself. It was a place, feminine power time was a sanctuary for me to reconnect with me after really letting go of so much of myself in the transformation from maiden to mother. So fast forward to a month or so ago, several months ago at this point, when Christine came to me with the invitation and the idea to co-host or to guest host the podcast for this season of light. And it was incredible because it was just a full body yes. And that's how I sense into things. I feel a rush, a whoosh through my body. And that's actually what I felt when I answered the call for the Phoenix Rising invitation back in 2012. I sensed this like wave of energy through my body. And now that's just my signal for when something is aligned. And so I said yes. And I've been getting visions for a bit too of myself and others as an amplifier of this feminine wisdom, because Christine has so beautifully channeled it. And we need to activate more lights to share it with the world and share it more broadly.
I love, as you said, the word amplify. That's something amplified in the background.
A huge rush of wind came through, and as I'm in Guatemala, everything is constructed with like heavy wood. So the shutters on the windows just blew open. They just flew open.
Well, let's just say then the feminine has arrived.
She's here.
I love this. She is here. That's Mother Nature. That's Mother Nature saying, indeed, let's throw the windows open. So what do you say? So I'd love you to use the word call. So remember, it's like question to you all, inquiry as we're going through this is like, what is calling you? Right? What is calling you? And sometimes, you can feel the call. Remember, our vocation is our call. And sometimes, like Jennifer, you just said, it's like a yes, like you just know it's a full body yes. And other times it's like a yes, but there's like that resistance. I feel like it's like taffy, kind of coming back. And sometimes it's like just straight up resistance. And we just, either stick our feet in the ground or run the other way. And one of the things that my spiritual mentor and mother Arylo once said to me, she's like, look, there's no shame in not being like ready to fully jump in to whatever is calling you. And so she has this little construct that she taught to me. So I'll share it all with you. And Jennifer and I were just talking about this before we got on, is okay, like 100% full body. Yes, I'm ready to step over into this next place to meet the call. But it could be like, well, okay, I'm ready, right? But maybe you're ready, you're getting ready to be ready, like I'm ready to almost be ready. And then there's like I'm willing to be ready. Not ready to be ready, but I'm willing to be ready. And then there's willing to be willing, maybe even willing to be willing to be willing to be ready. So just noticing that in these things that are calling for you, where you're at in the process, it's not like this would be the distorted masculine. You got to move it. If you have the call, if you have an instinct, you got to just go. And if you're not moving fast, you're like a big baby pants. No. Not at all. This is where we're going to go first is, the question of what is the feminine and how can it help us? How can it help you? And the first one is cycles. So we're going to be using the C as our alliteration word today, cycles. The feminine by its nature is cyclical. And if you take your finger and you move it like a circle, so just like take your finger and move it like a circle and move it slow. And notice how there's like, if you start up on top, there's a natural going down and it hits the bottom part and then it comes back up. And there's always like on that coming back up from the bottom, it takes a little energy, to kind of get it over the hump. And then it kind of that takes itself all the way to the top, and it has that momentum around it. So interestingly, if you continue that and you put your finger at that bottom part of the circle and just start to move up, that's where we're at in the bigger cycle of humanity. We're not at the bottom of the circle. We're just coming, we're just a little bit in that first turn. And so many of you that have heard me talk about cycles of time from a yogic philosophy and some other philosophies, we're in a 26,000 year time cycle and we're just coming past half through. And so there takes some momentum to get up to that. So like that's one way of thinking about cycles. And doesn't it just feel better? You're like, oh, we're in a 26,000 year time cycle. Awesome. You can also then break that down into a smaller time cycle of 2,000 to 2,500 years. Oh, and if you break it down even more, we're in this collective cycle of 100-year cycle between ages. Right, so we've talked about this a little bit. You've heard of the dawning of the age of Aquarius in the 1960s, and so where are we at? Like 2000? What is that, Jennifer? 60 plus years? We're like,
yeah, it's right about
yeah,
60 years.
yeah. So we're like we're halfway through. We're halfway through, and at the end of this year, we're going to be starting the next 20-year cycle in which the planet of transformation is actually in the sign of Aquarius. So whether you believe in astrology or you don't, it's real. I mean, it is a thing. It's not whether you believe in it or don't. I think most of us just don't totally understand it, or there's so much superficial parts of it that we're not going to get in there. There's a lot of depth to it. And what I want to bring into it today is about the cycles. So just how the feminine can help us, like, oh, okay, like if we're in 100-year transitional cycle collectively, and we're 60 years, we're more than halfway through, we're about to start this other 20-year cycle, which this planet of Pluto, which is a way out there, that's all about transformation, and it's moving into this more firmness energy that we're moving into for the next 2,000 years. I can stop waking up every day and thinking, oh my God, will things be better? Oh my God, will things be better? Oh my God, what's going on in the government? Oh my God, there's another war. I mean, these are all really challenging, awful things. However, we have to go through the almost like the core of the shadow and the things that are no longer working to get to the other side. And the more that you and I individually do that in ourselves, the more that adds to the collective people who are choosing to not deny the shadow, but instead of coming from the distortions of whether it's feminine or it's masculine or power over, but choosing, which we'll get to it towards the end, the road of compassion, the road of heart, the road of sustainability and love, the more that energy comes onto the planet. And that's what we're going to be doing together for the next 20 years. And then we'll go from there. So you can all just take a breath and feel held in this smaller cycle inside of these bigger cycles. And that's one way that it helps me. It reduces the anxiety, and I'll kind of turn it. I'm going to say one other thing, and then Jennifer would love, I know this has been a part that you've really worked with a lot, is if we break that down even more, we can break it down to the moon. And the moon is connected to the feminine. So archetypally, the sun is masculine, the feminine is the moon. We need both. They both need each other, right? Not one is better. They're just different. And one of the cycles that can really help us is working with the moon cycles. And it's and there's many reasons why, but I'm wondering, Jennifer, because I know that you have been devoted to working with the moon and the cycles of the moon for over 11 years now, and therefore have tapped into your own wisdom around this. If you want to share a little bit, obviously the moon called you when you were in Guatemala.
Yes.
Share a little bit about, when we go back to our central question today, what is the feminine? How can it help? What does the moon have to do with the feminine? Why do we say that the moon is feminine? And how can working with the moon cycles, like how is it supported you? And how could someone, where do we start? Or where do we deepen at this time?
Yeah. So really great questions. So I'll start with my history with the moon, really. As Christine mentioned, I started studying with her in 2012, and a dear friend now and sister who I met through Christine, she and I have continued since we studied with Christine to gather. It's been sometimes with more women, but, for sure the two of us. Every time the moon is in the new moon part of the cycle, and the moon goes through a 29 and a half ish, 29, 28-day cycle where it goes from being new, where you can't see it in the sky because the sun's not illuminating it, to gradually getting bigger. It goes up to full, and that's when the sun is across from it in terms of sun, earth, moon, shining a full light on the moon. And then it starts to wane and get smaller, smaller, smaller until it goes back to the new moon again. And so, really, with the moon cycles and with the bigger cycles that Christine was just mentioning, I think what cyclical living and observing these cycles helps me do is number one, it helps me slow down. Not everything is going to happen in one day. I have a tendency, I am a visionary type of person, so I can see things a long time before they're really ripe and ready. And I used to before working with the moon cycles and before working with the feminine, I think I used to push really hard to make those realities that I was envisioning true right now. And it never worked very well, if at all. And as I've worked with the moon cycles and the larger seasonal and annual and multi-annual cycles, I've learned to calibrate to my own visionariness. And maybe, Christine, this might have even been something that you gave me an inquiry around at one point. And I've realized that I'm about 3 years. My visions take about 3 years. So then we can use this wisdom of time spans, healthy time spans, to say, okay, well, what's kind of breaking it down and putting some structure around the steps? And this applies to, whether it's a goal for ourselves in our personal life, something to do with the care of our bodies, or if it's something that we're studying, if it's raising our families, or if it's starting a new business, if it's creating something like a work of art, like an album of songs or a book, anything. Everything is a creation, and we'll get there to another C word today. Yeah, that's what's coming through. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I'm curious what because this working with the moon cycles isn't just like an intellectual idea. To
Hmm.
me, it's something that over the course of working with it, just become part of my body ebbs and flows. And
Yes.
so I'm right. So I know that so many of you that are here with us, some of you are like, I've been flowing with the moon cycles and using them, whether it's for my career or my business or my dreams or my desires or whatever, for years and years and years. And some of you, this is new for, and some of you are anywhere in between. But I'm just curious, Jennifer, for you, how does it show up in your body and even in your business? You run a business, and you've run a business for the last, decade. Is how it shows up there. And there's like, what would be one practice? Because we want to make this practical too, then to kind of drop
Mhm.
it in, you all. As if we look at this next season of light, how is it going? How is it going to? Ooh, boy, more
There she is
noises.
again. She just came through.
Whoa! I love that those are the shutters, you all. That feels very exciting, doesn't it? Sorry if it's a little loud, but exciting. Um, so I'm curious how it feels for you, and why is this feminine? I just want to bring it back to that too. And then
Yes.
we'll move on to the second. It'll be a good segue into the second part.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that back. So there are two pieces there. Why is the moon feminine? And what's a simple way to start working with the moon? So to me, the moon is feminine because it's connected to our bodies. The moon cycle, and if you're in a female body, the women's menstrual cycle is connected. It's the same general length, and so that just for me, that's why the moon is feminine and where it's connected. In with the astrological wisdom traditions, the moon represents the feminine. It represents the inner landscape and the emotions. So it's also tied to that more yin energy, that receiving energy. Um, And then, secondly, in terms of how to start, I think the perfect place to start is with the new moon and simply tuning in. And this practically, it would be you can look online to find out when the new moons are, write them in whatever calendar you use. Just new moon, in my phone, it says new moon today. So, if I didn't remember, I could see it there when I look at my calendar. And then the practice on that new moon is to first recognize that it is a new moon. And then secondly, the energetics of the new moon it is a time to pause. The sky is dark. So there wouldn't, in ancient times, there wouldn't have been work happening at night. There would be no light. It's a time to go inward and it's a time to pause. And just for me, I think of it as just slow down. If you need an extra hour of sleep tonight, take it. If you need a break from your workouts, this would be the day to take a break. Um, it's the time to go inward and listen for guidance.
Beautiful. And remember that it lasts 2.5 days each phase. So if you miss one day, you get like 2.5 days. I always love doing my yoga practice a little less strong. I'm like, oh, I don't have to do stretch pose today. And it's like it just it is it's a breather. And I think that's what we're talking about. The cycles, what they do is they allow us to breathe. And so as we go through this season of light, part of staying light is the intensity is going to come from lots of different places. And so we want to make sure that we're breathing. And that's one of the ways that we can do it. Let's tie the cycles into the second part. So, everyone here right now, you're all in a different cycle of your life. So just take a moment with yourself and kind of tune in to the cycle of life you are in. And you can think of that, of course, by age, or you could think of it by archetype. There's different seasons of our lives, right? When we're children, when we're young adults, when we're supposedly adults, in different places of where we're at, and whether we're in like mothering or fathering or birthing things, and there's eldering, there's lots of different cycles. So just kind of tuning into where you're at in your cycle. So there is no cycle called retirement. I just want to say that is actually not a normal, that is man-made construct. But there is a cycle of really honoring your wisdom and where your wisdom is. And sometimes you're moving more from productivity into creativity, or into from productivity into mentoring. There's a lot of different ways that this manifests, more than we're going to go into today, but I feel like it's important to name the life cycle and also tune into the things that you have created in your life. And so whether that, like in Jennifer's case, is a business, or in your case, it is the things that you've created as in your career, as a career path that you've chosen, or things that you've recently created, or maybe for you it's mothering, or parenting, and things that you've given birth to. Sometimes there are things like me, like a whole body of work that came through from 2009 to 2020, so however many years that was, that came through me and this body of work. But just tuning into that right now, or I'm thinking of some friends and clients that I work with who are kind of at the pinnacle of their career in a profession they might have been in for the last 20 years. And it isn't like we just then, when as your a cycle is ending in a relationship to what you have created, because it has its own cycle too. And whether that, I'm thinking of you, Jennifer, even with mothering and parenting, it's like, okay, well, my children are 8 years old now, or they're moving into their next cycle. Okay, see y'all later. It was fun mothering you for like 8 years. But there is a relational change that has to happen. And in our bodies of work, if for any of you that are creators in that way, there's shifts that need to shift and how we relate to it. Same thing in our business, same thing in our career. The first is just about naming what that might look like for you, and then asking the question, and this is why this is what is the feminine and how can it help us? The feminine in its nature is relational. And so for a moment, consider that these are things that you are in relationship to. So there's you, and then there's the thing that you're in relationship to. a business, a set of books, in a body of work for me, your children, the mission that you took on when you said yes to your current job or career, like but it's a separate thing from you. And in the center, in the middle, is your relationship. And that's the relational field. It's the field of connection. And so what the feminine does for us, when you stay in relationship to something, it keeps us curious. That's that would be on the left side of the harmonizer. It's a curiosity instead of conviction. It keeps us into relationship to what does this thing want to be? What is it changing into? How am I changing? And therefore, how is the relationship between us changing? Instead of overlaying it needs to be this way. This is my mental idea. This is the vision, and trying to make it be something based on what we see, or failing to recognize that it is changing and then grasping onto what it has been, creating codependence or creating distortion. This happens a lot in the business world, where a company grows to a certain level over the course, because businesses have cycles too, and it gets to what I call its natural shape. And that might look like, a certain number of employees. It might look like a certain revenue level. It might look like a certain, profit margin. And then instead of just being like, how do we, this is the shape naturally. How do we maintain this, keep it healthy, just like a tree. We don't be like, keep growing, be bigger. Because you're in relationship. Like, I'm looking at my tree right now. And the tree's like, I'm not going to grow any bigger, but I'm going to make fruit for you, make magnolia flowers for you. Even these are the things I need you to do. Same thing could happen with a business. This is what, and I'll keep feeding you. I'll keep making flowers if you do these 4 things, but I'm not going to grow any bigger. And so when the feminine is when we're in relationship to a business or a creation like that, and we're like, okay, well, what do you need? And then what do I need? And then what do we want to co-create together? That's where wholeness and beauty emerge. But without the feminine being present, it becomes just about the product or about the mental. And without the masculine, the feminine can get distorted and get really codependent. And that is the shadow of the feminine, and want to grasp on, because I don't have that knowing that I can survive without you, and not letting things come to their natural completions, those relationships. So Jennifer, well, so everyone just take a breath. Hold on. I'll take a breath. Take a breath. That was a lot. I'm going to take a sip out of my Elevate from Joy coffee mug that I made to remind us all to take a breath. Oh, okay. Did I tell you how much I adore all of you so much? And Jennifer, how much I adore you, and how I'm so grateful that you're here, and that we didn't, Feminine Power Time is a example of this. It would, it's like I didn't just say, well, it's been 9 years. I have some other things I want to do. See you later. Been great knowing you. I really sat with it. And I'm like, I'm not sure what it wants to be and what it wants to evolve in next, but I feel like it needs a little space. And there's so much here that we can still receive from. And it needs some new energy to come in. Someone who also cares as deeply as I do, without me leaving, but us coming together to co-create that. And so that actually is really what we're doing. I'm curious for you, how this has showed up for you in your business or with your kids.
Yeah. It shows up in both. I'll speak to the business side of it because it's something that you and I worked through together. So about 2 years ago, and in a cyclical frame, my business was coming up against or up to about the 10-year mark of how long it had been in existence. And so it was a natural threshold that I was about to cross with my business. And there were a lot of things that were feeling just out of alignment. And Christine and I actually had a wise woman tea about it. And something that she helped illuminate for me was this concept that she just described of, it's not just the business, it's not just you, but there's a relationship there. There's a third entity. And so bringing awareness to this relationship, what is it? What does it need? What does it want to be? bringing awareness to the pieces that maybe aren't aligned anymore. Maybe they once were, maybe they never were, but either way, if it's not aligned, I can release it. And, I really, through awareness and through these inquiries that come from the feminine archetypes and the feminine wisdom, I have been able to, over the past 18 to 24 months, dramatically shift my relationship with this business that my partner and I created. And we started working on it right about the same time, 2012. That was quite the year. And whereas without the feminine wisdom just coming from the mind, as Christine mentioned, I would have seen my options in a very limited way. Either keep driving and striving and pushing this tree, or, maybe it's not even a tree, maybe it's a bush and I was trying to make it a tree. Keep pushing and striving, or just chop it down. And the feminine opened up just a spectrum of infinite possibility around what this relationship could be. And so I neither, I stopped trying to push it to be a tree, and I also didn't cut it down.
Hmm. I love that you and your partner birthed that company together. And when we think of it as a company, it's like I have to cut it down or I have to give it everything to grow. And imagine if you thought about that like your kids. We would never say that about, because you also have given birth to two beautiful children, right? And it's not like,
Mhm.
okay, well that was a nice 8 years or whatever. But children also grow in 7-year cycles, and I find that businesses grow in 10-year cycles, or creations grow in 10-year cycles. It's not just me, these are both numbers that are very deeply tied to, different wisdom traditions. And so, I'm curious, I'm just being being playful here because it's kind of funny, right? When we think about like, or to the kid, why are you only 7 and why are you not 6 feet tall yet? You should be fully manifest. Why can't you play the piano? Like we wouldn't, but we do it in other ways, where we don't recognize the relational field between us and our child. And for those of you, like, I don't physically have children. Obviously Jennifer does. But I have supported a lot of my friends who do, and so I'd love for you to share about this, Jennifer. It also helps me because even if you don't have kids, it's important for us to understand this so that we can support society and the collective and the people in our lives who do have children. I have a lot of clients who are executives who might work for whose person they report into doesn't have children, and I find that when that person who doesn't have children has an understanding for what it not just like what it takes to raise children, because there is that, but the cyclical nature of how children evolve. Like there's a difference between a 0 and 3-year-old and a 0 to 7 and an 8, and how that affects the parent as well, because it is one of their jobs. As it turns out, it is a job. So if you could just share a little bit about how you've noticed, and partly why you're here is because you have the capacity, because your children have crossed certain thresholds that could maybe bring a deeper understanding for all of us, either for our own lives or for those of us that support or are in relationship to people who do have the very important job of raising good humans.
Yes. Yes. So certainly, as the children are human, they're always shifting and changing, just like we are. Um, and as a mother, um, it's such an intense change, becoming a mother. It was for me, at least. Reminding myself of that cyclicality brings sustainability to the work of motherhood, because it's very easy to just pour all of oneself into your children, because it's a love like no other. And what I'm noticing now, because now my children are 7 and 5, so we're again, there's a threshold crossing with my oldest daughter, um, and you can look back and notice the shifts. Wow, there was a time where, like, physically they couldn't do anything without me. And even before they're born, like, you think about it, you're actually carrying them with you. They're with you. Your heart and their heart beat together, and to witness that. Christine, I think you've described it to me as an energetic cord also that is still very much intact through age 7 or so. because it's the feminine, so it flows. And as I've kept that in mind in these first years because they are intense, but thinking of it and savoring each moment for what it is, knowing that it's cyclical and that things are changing, um, has been really important. And so now that, now that they are more independent, being 5 and 7, I have also then opened up in my own life and great work. Okay, now there's more energy to bring out into the world. I've been focusing it all internally to my family, and now is the time to open up and take everything that I've learned from early motherhood, from being an entrepreneur, managing a business, and everything before that, and bring it out and share it as part of my great work.
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that it is a great work to birth and help steward these beings into their maturity, and that's the piece of the relational part, right? Noticing, oh, this is changing. This is changing, and everyone is having capacity. And I think that's true too for those of us that don't have physical children, is also noticing that whatever. I'm thinking of a dear friend who's been with an organization for about 5 going on 6 years, and 5 is a natural transformation time. And what the work that they've been able to do inside that system is amazing, like the consciousness that they've birthed in there, the systems they've put into place. And to really be able to start to, it's not quite time to let go, but it's close to let go of it being strong enough to survive their presence not being there. And so there's always a question for me then, is like, okay, then what's needed? What's needed forward? And I've just done that with my body of work, with my books. So I think that will be what we're going to wrap everyone else up into, because again, this could have been, we could have done a whole podcast series just on these 3 things, but we wanted to pepper them in for us as we go into the season of light. And I asked Jennifer before we got on, I boxed her turn. I said, okay, Jennifer, I want to end with, what are the feminine archetypes, the archetypal feminine energy that would love to come and play with us, to come and support us in this season of light? What's needed now as we look at these changes and these cycle shifts? How do we walk through the now while we're creating the next? And one thing for those of you that may be new to archetypal energy is energy that exists in the human psyche. It exists beyond just humanity. It's kind of like it's in the air. It's what we breathe. And this archetypal energy has the capacity to kind of, I like to call it, elevate us out of the banana world and into a higher level of frequency that gives us access to the wisdom of how to move forward at this time. And that's why the feminine, like, what is the feminine? How can it help us? If we can not just name these archetypal energies, but invite them in and play with them and use them in all of our choices, from business to motherhood to parenting to health, all of the things, we start to create a healthier, more whole reality. So I'm going to let Jennifer share the two archetypes that want to come and play. And then we will wrap you all up with a bow, and we'll get started next week on our season of light series.
Sure. So the 2 that came through, the first one is the muse, and she has lots of symbolism. They all do, but the butterfly is one of her symbolic animals, and she literally, like, in my mind or my vision, feels she like fluttered in on butterfly wings, and she's here to remind us that play is important, that creativity is important. Her mantra is, I play, I inspire. And all wonderful things, anything that's here materially on this planet, started as an inspiration. So it feels really appropriate for both a beginning time and also she is in the system that I work with. She's related to the season of the zodiac that we're in too, which is Gemini. It's the sparkly, inspirational time. And then the second one is the goddess of compassion. And she is really here to lead from the heart. She also has a gift with structure and recognizing with these cyclical structures, that there is an ebb and a flow. And again, she has a mantra too. I recognize, I seed. That feels very potent at this time of beginnings. That awareness, bringing that awareness in and then choosing what we are going to seed. What are we going to plant? And then nurturing it with our hearts and with our creativity, and just staying connected to the cycles throughout.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that is gonna be a beautiful place to end us. I know, Jennifer, we're taping this live right now, that you actually have a session with a beloved right now. So, we're gonna say goodbye to you for now, and then I will wrap us all up. But say goodbye to you, or we'll say see you later for now. We're gonna say see you later, Jennifer. See you later, Jennifer. And we will see you back here next week. She will be the voice you will hear, introducing the first in the 9-part series that we are calling season 8.5. She and I have curated and cultivated what we felt would really support us. I will be dropping in during the season of light with our annual solstice power pause, and likely another one right around Lammas, August 1st. So you'll have 2 episodes in there, and she will be taking us through, and also uh, making sure we have good inquiries and all of those things. So Jennifer, thanks so much for being here. Have a great session, and thank you for tending to and co-hosting this season of light for all of us. I look forward to hearing more of your beautiful voice and presence.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to everybody listening for continuing to be here together. This space that we're all creating is so powerful. So I look forward to sharing it with you and stewarding it with you over the season of light.
Okay, we'll see you next week then. Much love,
Much love.
Jennifer.
Bye.
Bye. All right, you all. So, that was good, right? So great I'm just looking so forward to this season of light. Even though you won't be hearing me every week with new content, the things that Jennifer and I are going to share, I've listened to them all over again, and we've done some editing of them, slight editing as well. And Jennifer will be doing a new intro to them with some thoughts and also some clear inquiries for each of us at the end of it. And then we'll also be posting those up on my blog. We'll post them up on the Feminine Wisdom Cafe as well with a weekly inquiry for you to kind of chew on. So really do lean into, I hope you really feel accompanied by this season of light, and knowing that you're not alone, and that as the banana world continues to do what it's going to do, we come back to 2 things. One, I think about the last chapter and Overwhelmed and Over It, which is about, instead of taking it all on, we are focusing on our part and valuing our part and knowing our part. And if each of us do that, it's like this beautiful web that we each are holding a part of, and in the center is this beautiful reality that we know is possible, that is deeply rooted in creativity and compassion, where the head and the heart are not separate, they are together, and both are valued, where the feminine and masculine are valued, and the systems that we have really value both, where both sovereignty and unity are present, and there's not this polarity that pulls us apart, either internally or in relationship or in our society, but we're able to take that polarity and really be with it like a paradox that sees the value of both parts, that they can both serve and disserve, and they serve the most when they're both free to really be in their essence, and that elevates us into a whole realm of elevated leadership and reality. And that's where we're going. And we're just preparing right now. When Aquarius goes in at the end of the year, we're going to dance through the next 20 years. So just things that you can do to really keep yourself light will be here with you, including listening for that call. And there's no rush, there's no rush, but there is a call to presence. So I will just give this to you, kind of wrapping us up here, to take this energy of compassion. And oftentimes we'll think of compassion as like Buddha, or it can feel very masculine, but the goddess of compassion, the energy of that would be more like a Kuan Yin kind of energy. And this is through all different traditions. It's not religious. It is embodied. And it has this capacity, what it says, I recognize, I seed. So what are you recognizing in your own field that's calling you to seed? or may already have been seeded many years ago or all along, and it's just ready to sprout, and really, really bloom. And what is it? The muse, creativity. I play, I inspire, I create. And if you go into this next season of light from that place of play, of experimenting, of letting inspiration move you versus the intellect tell you what you have to do. Inspiration moves you and the intellect follows. Create form from that. So it's just starting to notice that. And then coming back to your heart for a moment and just really feel the truth of who you are, why you are here, to be the beautiful presence that you are, savor your life, to be in connection, to know that you are right where you are supposed to be, that you are meant to be. And listen deeply to this heart of yours. It has the answers. I recognize, I seed, I play, I inspire, I create. I stay in tune with the natural cycles. And with that, we will see you next week. And hey, do share this. One request, share this with a friend. Invite them to the season of light with you. And that way you guys can hang out together and share some of these things together. And one last part, join us for the Mid-Year Power Pause. That's coming up every June. And you can find out more about that at flowpowerpause.com. All right. With that, my loves, we will see you soon. Much love. Thank you for your presence on the planet.